If you were to define your political economic philosophy in a paragraph, what would it be?
That's pretty challenging. I would say that my political philosophy is very, very much like my economics philosophy. It's laissez-faire. That is, people have the right to do whatever they wish so long as they don't violate the property rights of others. And my thinking about many, many issues, my initial premise that I make is that I own Walter Williams. I am the property of Walter Williams. You are the property of Brian Lamb. And so what that means when you start off with the idea of self-ownership, well, then there are certain things that are clearly immoral. And the reason why they're immoral because they violate private property. That is, the reason why murder is immoral is because it violates private property. Rape is immoral. It violates private property. Theft is immoral. It violates private property. And many Americans can go along with this, but I say something else violates private property that many Americans would not agree with me. That is, I think that the forcible use of one person to serve the purposes of another, it violates private property, because keep in mind, a working definition of slavery is in fact the forcible use of one person to serve the purpose of another. And if you look at all these the government spending in our country, that Americans are being forcibly used to serve the purpose of another. That is, your money is being taken by, under intimidation, threats, and coercion to serve the purposes of some other American. I think that's immoral.
Can you remember when you started to really feel strongly about this?
Oh, I don't remember, but I think maybe it was like in the 60s or in the 70s, because in my younger days I was I think I was far more liberal, if you want to use that term, of and thinking that government should play a bigger role than I think government should play now. So I think that maybe when I started going to graduate school at UCLA or finishing up my undergraduate work, I started asking questions.
Do you know why you did? I mean, do you remember anything happening in your life?
No, I can't think of anything. I just think I became exposed to the writings of people like Frederick Bastiat and Hayek, and I had some very tenacious mentors at UCLA that just would not tolerate nonsensical statements. For example, I was a supporter of the minimum wages, and so I had a professor at UCLA ask me, well, are you more concerned about the intentions behind the minimum wage law or the effects of the minimum wage law? And so he said, well, why don't you read some stuff by Milton Friedman and Yale Brosen. And so I became convinced that the effects of the minimum wage law were very, very counterproductive to low-skilled people.
I wrote down a quote of yours I found, evaluate the effects of public policy as opposed to intentions, which is basically what you've been saying.
That's right. And I think that to come up with compassionate policy requires that we engage in dispassionate analysis, that we separate ourselves away from compassion, because if we become compassionate in our analysis, well, then we're going to wind up with a dispassionate policy.
We've got a number of places that people can find your column, and we'll put it on the screen. And there's townhall.com, JewishWorldReview.com, WorldNewsDaily.com, and there's LibertyPen.com.
There's also my webpage, WalterEWilliams.com.